What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Based on finally seeing the changes in action and my previous completely incorrect statement of how Ahri got nerfed, I want to make a video going over the changes to her in a bit more detail as well as champion balance in general, and I think there's a lot to learn about it. Let's get started. Now the first thing I want to brush over really quick are my overpowered champions for patch 5.2. I won't be making an updated video for it since it's exactly the same as it was in 5.1, but instead of Akali for the mid lane we have Ahri. That's right, Ahri. Despite the removal of Deathfire Grasp and the damage amplification on her charm, she has completely risen above to become definitely the strongest champion in patch 5.2. Her win rate spiked up by about 4 to 5% and sits around 55 to 56% right now, which is just absolutely huge and pretty much unheard of for a mid laner. There's actually a lot you can learn from the changes that was made to her as well, so let's break it down. Her Q now gives you a solid movement speed buff while her orb is traveling that decays. Now it's honestly pretty lame that Riot didn't give us the amount of movement speed that you actually get, but after calculating it roughly in custom games, it's probably around 60 to 65% movement speed that decays, which is huge. Okay, this change in and of itself is insane. It basically gives her uncounterable free poke in lane. Since you can just Q and then run away, it's so easy to get your poke off. And the damage of the Q is the same as always, so it turned into a complete monster of an ability by adding loads of utility to the skill. From the change on this skill, we can see that when a champion gets increased utility, it can compensate for a ridiculous amount of damage. By making your Q extremely safe, you no longer have to hit any other abilities in lane to get off that insane poke since it's so free and you're not going to be taking damage back. Not to mention, it helps her chase and disengage, giving her the tools to do much more with the exact same skill. The fact that she can use the utility to kite and all that good stuff will almost always mean that you're going to stay alive long enough in a fight to land an extra ability, which is much better than simply just having a small bump up in damage. Her W also received a huge buff, but in a different form. The base damage was very slightly increased, but that didn't actually do that much other than to help her clear the creep waves with a WQ combo, which although was great, was something she could already do to some extent. The real change takes place in the quality of life changes where they fixed a bug, made the W charges proc faster, made it stop cancelling auto attacks, and finally improved the targeting system. The quality of life overhaul was actually a massive buff to Ahri's W, which previously was not the most useful skill ever, has now become a fantastic ability. It's so easy to just hit your W and damage your opponent when they go in for a CS really quickly. And it just adds more free poke into her kit in combination with her Q that has become much easier to use since it's faster as well as clearing the waves does honestly actually help kind of a reasonable amount. It's definitely noticeable in the game. Overall, the thing to understand with these quality of life changes is that they are most definitely a buff, and the reason why is because quality of life changes make the champion easier to play. They improve the fluidity of mechanics and the value of the skill, and so it becomes much easier to use the spells more effectively, and for the purposes of solo queue, making a champion easier to play is a buff. As for her charm, the damage amplification was removed, while the base damage and AP ratio were buffed as compensation. This change is actually really interesting and points out something really cool in Ahri's champion design, which is the fact that her playstyle is really dynamic. The amplification removal as well as the DFG removal took away a potentially 44% damage amplification modifier, as well as the active single target nuke for 15% of the target's maximum health. In compensation, she received a small base damage and AP ratio buff, so we can roughly put the stat of her burst damage that she lost in this patch to be around 30 to 35%, meaning that her burst on this patch is 30 to 35% weaker than it was on the last patch with Deathfire Grasp, which I feel is a reasonable estimate. But the thing is that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Her playstyle changed from an assassin to being a kite-heavy, sustained DPS mage with amazing mobility to chase and escape. Ahri is practically an AD carry in form of a mage in terms of playstyle now, and with the pick potential still being there in her charm and her fantastic kiting, she's just amazing. She can be played as a very safe, kite-oriented damage dealer, and with the addition of the range crowd control and insane mobility in her kit. And overall, this means that the 35% damage decrease she received was nothing compared to the utility that she gained due to her having a dynamic playstyle. This goes to show and actually quantify the true value of utility on a skill, which I think is pretty cool. Her utility buffs were worth significantly more than 35% of her overall burst damage, which is really crazy when you think about it. And lastly, the changes to her ultimate once again was a buff in the form of a quality of life change. This one was not as significant as that of her W, but it still really improved the fluidity of going over walls, which will prevent a solid amount of positioning mistakes in your games on her. And overall, the removal of DFG in itself was definitely a nerf. There's no arguing that the item was really good on her, but due to her dynamic playstyle and flexible build paths, it resulted in her being in an amazing spot now after all of this compensation. But the thing to learn from the Deathfire Grasp removal is that so many things that are not included in a champion's kit have major effects on balance. Items, the map, other champions in the game, things like that all have a huge effect on individual balance. In fact, with these Ahri buffs, any champion that can do well against her in lane also received an indirect buff due to the matchup, since Ahri will be a much more popular pick now. Every time something gets changed in the game, it affects a whole spectrum of other things in the game, which in turn affects other things. So even the smallest change can have a huge effect on the game, and it's an awesome part of what keeps League of Legends fresh and fun. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video since I'm not too sure exactly what point I was trying to make with it, but it was a fun thing to look over at least. My name is Jeremy, and that's for my video on Ahri in patch 5.2. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button so I can tell, and be sure to check me out over on all the socials, which you can see on your screen. And if you really enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe for some more awesome content in the future, or check out some of my other videos on your screen as well. And above all else, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.